And today we've got Joel joining us, Mr. Hardwicks. And of course, we've got a couple of questions, that we wanted to ask. But first, just an opportunity for Joel and for the people that don't know Joel, just to introduce himself.
Hey guys. So I'm Joel. As Theo mentioned, I'm the owner of Mr. Hardwicks. We're an e-liquid company that's been around, I guess, a couple of years now. And we do e-liquids. We also dabble a bit in DIY. Got a couple of one-shots and some agencies for some flavoring houses. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. More will be revealed in the questions, I suppose.
Yeah, I think one of the questions that I had was the process behind recipe development, and then after that we can, also talk about the gear that you use for testing. So what process do you go through when you're developing a recipe? This could be for you personally DIYing, or, I'm sure it differs potentially for, your commercial lines out there.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have a set process, because sometimes like inspiration just strikes. Like I'll just see something and I'll think, oh, I got to try it. I'm sure it's like that for a lot of us. You just see a flavor and you suddenly think, oh, what happens if I mix that with that? And sometimes I get lucky. More often than not, though, I don't. And then other times it will start with a concrete idea, like some of the stuff that I'm about to release now. Like those all came from pretty solid concrete ideas. And then it was like, okay, these are the ideas, and how do we go about like creating these profiles? So I guess in terms of recipe development, then I usually look for like the base flavor. Like what is the one strong base that everything is going to pretty much stand on? And then sometimes it might not be one flavor. It might be a combination of one or two or three flavors, whatever. But what is the central core that everything is going to rest on? And then once I get that right, then I'll start embellishing it. And so that's, I guess, the general broad stroke process. And then you asked about equipment. I don't really mess around with a lot of equipment. I sort of found my happy place with I guess it's quite old now, the Petri version 2 RDA. That just works for me. I've tried dozens of other things and nothing else seems to satisfy me as much. So I don't know if it's like as accurate or whatever as some of the other devices out there. I don't know, but just for whatever reason, I just like it and it just works for me. And then if I'm happy with it on the Petri, kind of as my baseline device, then I'll start trying like all kinds of putting it in tanks and like RTAs and the K-Fun and like an old Griffin that I've got lying around, and just all kinds of things just to see how it translates. That's pretty much the approach.
I think for me, it's like one question I've got is what's your time frame on like how long it takes to develop a recipe, and how that differs from DIY? Because I noticed like I don't know if it's just me, but I think DIY is a bit quicker to finish a recipe or decide that a recipe is finished, where commercial, because of the viability and trying to sell it, it seems to take a bit longer.
Well, I think there's a number of factors, right? Because with DIY, you really only have to please yourself, mostly. You're doing it for yourself. Do it yourself. So with the commercial liquid, it obviously has to have as broad an appeal as possible, and everything that entails. And then you've got to test how it steeps. I know, like Richard always just steeps everything by default. So like I'm the opposite. If I mix something, I try it straight away. Like as soon as I shake it up and I try it straight away, and then I keep trying it like down the line, and I make note of how it changes. right? So, which for me is as instructive as just leaving it to steep, or more instructive, because you get to see how flavors change over time and how they interact with each other over time. So anyway, testing batches for commercial release obviously just takes longer because you got all these different batches, and then you make a move, and then you got to wait, see how it steeps. What happens at 2 weeks? What happens at 3 weeks? At a month? At 6 weeks? At 3 months? Because stuff will sit on a shelf for 3 months. Sometimes it happens, and is it still going to be all right? So yeah, I guess from that point of view, it does take a bit longer. The development process is a bit more thorough, I guess, than just doing DIY. I feel like this today, so I'll just mix it, and I guess I think that should answer your question.
Yeah. What's the longest you've steeped like your commercial mixes for testing?
Generally 3 months. If it's still okay at 3 months. If it's still good and vibrant at 3 months, then it's pretty solid. I know it's not going to change too much more, maybe a little bit, generally not too much more. But I think 3 months has worked out to be pretty safe for me. And then, I have obviously gone back and tested stuff that's much older, like 6, 9 months, 1 year, and that kind of thing. And just to see, and a lot of it is fine. At those times, some of them don't really last too much past about 18 months. And it depends a lot on the packaging, like those old school glass bottles that, we favored for a long time. Yeah. So those guys are cool. Those guys are cool for about a year, but you actually don't get as the same longevity as you do out of a well-sealed PET bottle, in my opinion. So just because of that rubber stopper is quite porous and it lets a lot of air in over time. That's the weak point of the glass bottle. If you're going to store stuff in a glass bottle for a long time, I suppose it would be better if you could seal it off like old school style, or like Tarks still does. You got the lid and it doesn't have a dripper thingy attached to it. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm sort of digressing now. Like, I guess 3 months, I figure is pretty safe.
No, we can digress a little bit. What bottles do you prefer then?
The bottle debate. For DIY, I still like glass because you can wash them out, right? So you get much more reusability out of it. So I like to have some glass ones around for that reason. That's just for kind of DIY, but for actual usage, like day-to-day usage, I do like chubby gorillas. I do find the version 3 ones, they've addressed a lot of the problems. I know some people don't like that. There is no perfect bottle yet. But for me, the chubbies the version 3 is as close as I found to something that's really good. They do seal quite nicely. I haven't had one pop on me yet, like the lids popping off like some of the clone ones do. But then obviously when it comes to DIY, it's a bit of a pain to get that lid off and then rinse them out, and they don't clean out as nicely as glass and that. But just for general day-to-day use, running around and that, like, I'd rather have a chubby gorilla with me than a glass bottle with a dropper.
Awesome. Then, I mean, you're in a bit of a unique situation. So, like you said when you were introducing yourself, you have commercial juice lines, one shots out there as well. But at the same time, you dabble a little bit into DIY, and then you also a flavor wholesaler for Flavour Express.
Well, actually, it's ECX. So E-Cig Express have got a couple of their own in-house lines like Flavour Express and Jungle Flavors, and then they have certain exclusives, like with Wayne, for example, DIY or Die, like they have, may have an exclusive flavor of his. So anything that's like that, I can distribute. So yeah, that would be your FE stuff or jungle flavors. I mean, we haven't, to be perfectly frank, I haven't really pushed that side of the business as far as I would like it to go. I think it can be a lot more accessible to the other resellers locally and also just to the public. And also, I feel we can bring the price down. The problem has just been with ECX is it's complicated, but basically like the type of payment methods that they currently accept, and minimum order quantities and stuff like that. And some of their flavors are a bit more expensive than what we're used to, like especially like their biscuit. For example, Jungle Flavors biscuits actually very expensive flavor for whatever reason. So it's definitely something a big focus this year is going to be expanding the DIY concentrate side of the business. And yeah, I've got some pretty interesting stuff in the works and partnerships that I can't like talk about too much now, but like, I want to make Jungle Flavors a lot more accessible because I think they're really good flavors that should be more widely available at a better price point. And the same with the rest of the FE line. I mean, I don't like all of it, but some of it is quite useful. And then we have concluded a nice deal with an up and coming, much talked about at the moment, flavoring company for exclusive distribution. And that I'm really going to be pushing. Working hard on getting that stuff out to everybody during the course of the year. So I guess I want to really, I mean, the commercial side or commercial e-liquid or whatever is obviously something that's like is an important part of my business. But I started out, my roots are actually kind of in DIY, and I want to grow that side of the business because for me, it's a more fun part of the business, number one. And number two, I believe that is where the industry is headed. Like or not, I think, flavoring is the future of the business, at least the way I see it or the way I'd like it to be. So, yeah.
I think I just got one thing though. You can't mention the company that you're partnered with or concluded?
No, not right now. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone can figure it out because there's
the bottles come upside down.
Yeah, no comment, but I mean, I'm sure everyone can figure it out. It's pretty obvious. It's a flavor of the month kind of thing. I have been through a lot of their flavors. I mean, they have a pretty large lines, so when I say a lot, maybe just over a third, I guess, I've been through so far, about 60 flavors or whatever. Anyway, there's some really good stuff. There's also some really like just average stuff, which, I think we'll just wait. Obviously, bring out the bangers first.
No soap, right?
What's that?
No soap.
No soap.
No soapy flavors. No soap for them again.
Try and avoid the soap, as much as possible. The soap and the cardboard, and it's a bit weird because some of the flavors are definitely not what they're meant to be. There's a bunch of flavors that quite literally are like good, as if they were named something else. They would be good at that particular thing. So if you have a whatever, like a cream. It's called a cream. It should actually be called like a strawberry or something. Would be a great strawberry, but it's not a cream. So there's a few cases like that I'm figuring out and whatever. Yeah.
That's similar to Purulum.
Yeah.
Every time I ask Fear about a Purulum flavor, he says it's a great flavor, but it's not what it says on the label. It's something else.
Yeah, 100%. It's exactly like, well, actually more extreme, I think, than some of that stuff. Anyway, Yeah, they have some good flavors. They do have some good flavors. I mean, I know things tend to get hyped and and all of that, but just on a real practical level, I've tested a lot. There are some really good, useful ones, and there's some ones that I personally don't see, a place for them yet. Anyway, and I'll figure out something eventually. But anyway, so as I was saying, I want to kind of expand that side of the business, and I have some really cool plans. I wish I could say more, but it's still some stuff that's still in discussion. But if it works out, it's definitely going to be cool for the DIY scene, if the stuff works out. So there's that, and then bunch of one shots. I mean, everyone. I mean, I'm sure most of you guys remember, like, we brought out those in your regular one shots a couple of years ago, almost 18 months ago. And it was a complete flop for a number of reasons. One being the price. There's a lot of complaining about the price. And number two, people just did not get it. They just really didn't get it. So we were just a bit too early. And kind of now everyone's doing it. So, I guess the market is ready now. So we'll be expanding that side of things as well, having more of them. And again, we already brought some of the pricing down. I'd like to bring it down further. And there'll, some more local stuff, some more other, I'd like to bring out more of Wayne's stuff, but also we're teaming up with some of the other guys, like you may have seen, we're doing something with Shindo, doing the mango sticky rice as a one shot, which I think is probably a good candidate, because what else are you going to do with that rice flavor? So we're growing it, and hopefully there will be a nice big line of well priced one shots coming out this year.
I don't know. Yeah, Rich, go for it.
If I could just ask you, Joel, Wayne was asked this, and I'd like to hear your answer to a similar question. Obviously, both of you develop both for DIY and for commercial. What are the factors that differentiates the two for you? I mean, if you make a strawberry cookie or whatever, what in your mind says to you, I'll put this on ATF as a DIY, or I'll go commercial with this?
Well, I mean, there's a number of factors. Like, one might be just like, I'll really like it, but I'll think, okay, this just doesn't really fit in the line, like just conceptually or aesthetically, or or maybe it's just too weird, or it's something like that. Or maybe it's like you say, you used the example of strawberry, and it's like, okay, well, do I really want another strawberry in my line, kind of thing. And then I think, okay, well, it's a great recipe. I could probably release it commercially, but it just doesn't have a place in my line, so I'm going to publish the recipe. So that's one way that it could go down. It's a bit tricky sort of balancing the two worlds, I guess, DIY, and because also there is a type of rivalry and unspoken kind of, well, actually not unspoken, it's very often spoken, but there is a kind of, the dissing on both sides of things. The DIYers are like, commercial juice is shit, and it's just oversweetened, and it's crap, and it's too expensive, and all of that, and like premium, there's no difference. And then you get the commercial guys who like, that stuff will give you cancer, and it's probably mixed in a bathtub or a toilet, and so both sides are constantly shitting on each other, which really doesn't need to be the case. I think there can be mutual respect between the two, because I mean, I've had a lot of commercial stuff, which is excellent. It's excellent, and it's inspired me to like improve myself as a mixer, and I'm like, well, how did they do that? That's really interesting. And I mean, sure, there's a bunch of shit, but there's also a bunch of shit, DIY recipes. Like, in fact, the bulk of them are probably shit, right? So, I would like to find a way that we can all just live in peace. But yeah, it's currently not the case. But yeah, look, sometimes it might just be something weird, like where, you know, I like it, but I know, okay, this is just not going to fly commercially. Like, but someone out there might like it, so then like, okay, I'll share the recipe. And yeah, look, you know, and also other weird things happen. Like DIYers can be quite vicious as well, you know. I mean, I'm not saying the other side can't be, but, you know, like, for example, what happened with Zoob or whatever it's called now, you know, like the one of the versions of the recipes got leaked. You know, it was posted in confidence in like a small DIY group, and one of those members leaked the recipe, and that recipe is now on ELR, you know, and it's posted by whoever, you know, and these people clearly love that they have this power and this information, and they can share, you know, this stuff, and it's just weird. It's weird, like, to me, like, you know, this thing was like a breach of confidence, and now, you know, and people are like reveling in it. So it's weird. It's just it's kind of it's weird on all sides, you know. But yeah, anyway, so that's how it goes. This, you know, we all know there's always drama of some sort going on. Usually blows over, but there's always something.
Yeah, what would vape be without free shit and drama? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Needs to be there.
Super boring. I was just thinking, what drama can I bring tonight? Must be some drama.
I think, you know what's interesting though is like, so the Zoob recipes now, so obviously it's not the actual recipe, but a version of it leaked.
Yeah, it's not the final. It's not the final. It's not the production version, but it is a version. It is legitimately one of the working versions that got leaked. Yeah. But
I think you've played in a similar space though when you first launched with Debbie Does Donuts,
100%,
or Smackaroon, and I think, you know, what are your thoughts on how it was to navigate that? Because obviously it was stuff that is not necessarily your commercial recipe, because those were tweaked versions of an available recipe, but you've kind of sat in that same situation, and how did that affect you?
Well, I mean, it was definitely like an interesting, I guess, experiment to start a business that way, because that's how it started. And honestly, I can't say how it affected sales or it didn't affect sales. What it did, however, for me, what the difficult part was the fact that there were other companies, local companies, that were coming out and like literally selling bro nuts. And some of them even called it bro nuts. One of them specifically called it bro nuts. You know, and I think only fairly recently changed the name, and that is still out there. They're still selling it. I think they now added hazelnut to it or something. But that was the hardest part for me, was kind of dealing with all that shit, like dealing with all the people that decided just to not give a fuck and just do it anyway. Like, so my approach was go to Wayne, go to the mixer, pay them, do a partnership, do a deal. And so yeah, the hardest part for me was not, I don't know how it impacted my sales, probably not too much. The hardest part was people that were just exploiting it just because it's so easy to exploit it. And you know, despite the protestations of the mixers, despite like Wayne coming on and saying, don't sell my recipes, like please don't do it, people still going and doing it. So that was the hardest part. And that's kind of why I'm not really doing it anymore. Except, I mean, like Shindo, it's a different story. It's a one shot, you know, mix it or make it, you know. Already had one guy complaining about that. Like, why don't you just mix it yourself?
I did see that post, but I mean, you just made a good point now. I've got the sweet rice. It's still pretty full. Yeah. And I don't think I'm going to buy it again, because to me, it's a very representation of wet AP. In my mind, it's a wet AP.
Right.
So in my mind, I'm like, the one shot makes sense because I'll get the recipe, but I don't feel like buying all the ingredients, especially once my Flavora runs out. I don't think I'll be buying Flavora mango because that's the only recipe it works in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not saying I agree with that thing about Flavour Mango, but I get where you're coming from. Look, again, one shots, it comes down to, it's just choice, like you can mix it yourself, and if you think that having sweet rice around on its own is going to be handy, then you have the choice. Like it's, but I have discovered there really are people that don't want to learn about mixing and how things this and that. They just want a one shot. Like they want the one shot because it's easy and it's value for money. Like they know enough to know how to mix it, how to make their own. It's kind of like more like the cooking at home thing, like, or even like, like the Woolworths meal, still expensive, but cheaper than eating out, still a bit on the price. It's not as quite as cheap as doing everything yourself, but, so there are people out there that just want it, and in fact, even me, I got a whole ton of one shots, tons of them. Like I got ECX sent me like their full range and whatever. And sometimes I want to mix something, and honestly, I just like, I'm just going to mix a one shot. What a pleasure. Like, and so I guess even for us like pros,
What I like about it is the whole inventory management thing. I mean, if I mixed Obsidian on my own, I'd have to get FW pie crust. It's the only recipe that uses FW pie crust. Now, how long is that bottle of FW pie crust going to sit in my stash if I'm only mixing Obsidian? So particularly for flavors, and this is where things like Flavour Rich Cinnamon come in. I mean, you'll only ever buy one bottle of rich cinnamon. So if you can get a one shot, which only contains, 0.5% of rich cinnamon, using all your concentrates in the mix, sort of in ratio to their potency. So you're not sitting with these bottles that still have 9 or 8 mils in 3 years
definitely
down the line.
Definitely cuts down on your wastage. I mean, I made the mistake of the first time I bought rich cinnamon, I bought 4 ounces from directly from Flavour. And I mean, I still got like 99% of it in that like now 2-year-old 4 ounce. I'm going to have to chuck it. Right.
No, put it in your
I've mixed a lot of stuff. With rich cinnamon, like a lot. And I haven't even, you know what I mean? So I totally get that, even if it was a 30 ml bottle, I'd still have a lot left.
It's one of those concentrates that replenishes itself overnight. I mean, you use so much, you come through in the morning and it's refilled. The pixies came in and refilled it overnight.
It like sucks VG out of the air. Like, yeah. Yeah, no, it is one of those, and there's a bunch of them. I mean, pie crust is a great case in point because very early on in my mixing, I bought. No one was carrying TFA pie crust, and Valley Vapor had FF Flavor West pie crust. It's like 2 years ago, and I bought 100 mils of Flavor West pie crust, and I've still got it. I've still got it. I used some of it when Obsidian came out, and then I was like, I don't know. I think this is probably lost some potency. So then I bought more. I still have the original 100 mil.
You probably got excited when Obsidian came out. You're like, finally, I have this flavor lying around, and here's a recipe to use it for.
Yeah, I've learned my lesson. I've got so many of those, like 100 ml and 4 ounce and 16 ounce flavors that at some point I thought I'm definitely going to use all this, and then like it just sits. I got to chuck a lot of stuff. I've wasted a hell of a lot.
That's actually a point that I brought up that I wanted to ask you. Sorry, Rich, I'll just go now. But what does your stash look like? So for a measly DIY, we sit at like 300, but I take it as commercial, you need every single ingredient available. So what does your stash look like?
I lost count long ago. I stopped counting. So I don't know how many there are. There's just lots. I have a whole room, like a decent sized room that's just filled with concentrates. in boxes on shelves, in ranging from 10 ml sizes to 5 liter sizes. Sometimes I've even bought like a 5 kg of a specific flavor and then ended up not using it. So it's pretty horrendous. My stash looks horrible. It just looks like it's like a disaster area. I mean, all the commercial stuff is at our lab, like safely out of the way, and I just have like everything else that's like left behind, which is just, you know. And then, like, for example, I get new lines. So like I got this stuff in here, it's sitting in my studio, because, you know, and that's just like one little box with like 60 flavors in it from one company. So
do you still get the things like, or do you get it at all? So if I bring new flavors I always get the look from my wife, and she's like, more? Do you have more? So do you still get that, or is it just like an everyday thing?
It's just every day. Yeah. Like currently, because of this new line, like I just had a whole bunch of flavors delivered to my house in their boxes, which I'm then going to take through to the lab. And it's like you can't like walk through the lounge at the moment because it's just boxes, piled up boxes. And then, yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of funny, but it's also like, it's like worn me down a bit as well. I'm like, you know, like, no, I don't want more flavors in my house. Like, you know, I don't want a single flavor test and see what this is. Like, had enough of that, you know. Just get tired of that sometimes, to be honest. Like, I mean, sometimes obviously it's really exciting, but other times just like, oh, you know.
Yeah. So just going on that, with all the new flavor companies coming in, you know, we also touched a little bit on first rule issues, right?
Yeah.
The first rule problem now with not having a flavor that's in a recipe is becoming real, you know.
Yeah,
so people are
time.
posting recipes, and you first rule on at least 4 of the ingredients, right? So we just wanted to, this was Richard's question actually, but very interesting. We wanted to talk about the sustainability of flavorants or flavor houses, right? Flavor companies. For the people that are specifically creating flavors for vaping, like Vape Train and Flavora. Where do you think
Flavor Arts? Flavor Arts number 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as the sustainability goes, Flavor Arts the king. I mean, they've got Clearstream. They've done the most testing. They got the most results available to the public. So yeah, sorry to interrupt, but you want to just finish the question?
No, that's pretty much it. So we just wanted to talk about the sustainability of flavor houses, right?
Well, I mean, you know, I think like a Flavora, and maybe Vape Train to some extent, you know, where they have created these things specifically for our industry. I guess it's a double-edged sword, you know, because on one hand, like if the industry kind of goes away or people just lose interest, or, you know, some amazing new product comes out that like just takes over, and that's really you know, and it just satisfies your cravings and it tastes good, and like, you know, you just, you know, like, I mean, think about it, like in 3, 4, 5 years time, do you all see yourselves still mixing? Or, you know, I mean, I'm not 100% sure I know the answer to that question. I mean, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a great hobby. You know, is it something I'm going to do for the rest of my life? You know, and I guess you get new mixes coming in and replenishing the pool and whatever. I mean, I like the concept. I think it's a good idea, and it's a step towards sustainability. And certainly for e-liquid manufacturers, you know, like to get through the PMTA in the States, they need to know a lot of proprietary information. And some flavor houses aren't willing to give that up. And then that means you just can't use those flavors in your commercial product.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's exactly, one of the next questions that we had was consistency around flavor itself, right? So I think we said there, who was it, Concrete River, that doesn't use
Inawera.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure you are considering this when you mixing up commercial or creating a commercial recipe or juice.
Yeah, I mean, it's a risk. Like, the thing is, Inawera they're obviously like the worst at the moment. They're the worst because they just do it without notice, without any warning. I mean, I have 3 liters of lime that I bought because I was going to do Manson's One Shot. We wanted to release guava lime candy. Can't do it anymore because Inawera killed lime, and they didn't tell anyone. They just did it. They just sell it to you as if it's the same product, but it's not the same product. And I mean, it's drastically different. I'd say it's probably like 5 times weaker than the original, at least. You can vape the new Inawera lime at like 5% standalone, no problem. Like the old one, you used it, 1/4%, 0.5%. It's a radically different flavor. So yeah, I mean, it is something definitely. Like, I tried just to not use Inawera because I don't know when it's going to happen. And I suspect a lot of other things have changed. Honestly, to me, biscuit is not the same as it used to be. I really don't think it's...
That's definitely changed.
Yeah.
I've got the 2 variations. So I can see just on the consistency of the color, if I hold them both up, you can see the difference in them. And I mean, Simply Cannoli uses it, right? So I've got about 9 mils left of the original biscuits, and then I can't mix up that recipe anymore. I'll have to look for another biscuit.
Yeah. So, they're very sneaky because they just do this stuff without telling anyone. I mean, the list that came out, everyone thought, oh, well, that's the list. But actually, that's just what they got kind of caught out with. There's definitely a bunch of other stuff. People have been saying shisha strawberry is different. I noticed biscuit was different quite long ago. So I just try and avoid Inawera where I can, which is kind of... So yeah, I was just saying that Inawera lime has changed, and that like I'm stuck with 3 liters of it that like they sold me, like, and that I can't use. Well, not for its intended purposes anyway. So yeah, Inawera is one of those companies that like I'm very, very wary of using their stuff for commercial development because you never know. I mean, I think if it's a new flavor, like new, like it came out in the last 6 months, you're probably safe because it's been made to this new TPD spec. So you should be okay, but still, it's still a shitty move. So yeah, I don't really trust them. That said, there's other companies that have done this, right? Like Capella's New York cheesecake is now like on version 3 or version 4. I don't even know what version it is because they got version 1, old version 1, and then version 2. But then old version 1 changed and became version 3. And it's still called V1, but it's definitely not the same as the OG V1. And the same with their chocolate glazed donut. Definitely not the same. So, yeah, I mean, it's not just Inawera. Capella has pulled that move. TFA, I mean, they also do it, but they're much more transparent about it. And they don't seem to discontinue, sorry, they just give you another option. So I think overall TFA is probably my favorite. I got to be honest, like they're really consistent, quality wise. They don't always, like some of the new flavors they release aren't that great or whatever, but like you can pretty much make anything if you've got the whole TFA line. And the flavors generally don't fade out. They've got good longevity. They have constant supply. It's a good company, I think. That's,
Have you found consistency from peanut butter? Wayne was saying he found TFA peanut butter to be very inconsistent.
I haven't personally had that problem, but I don't like it enough to have gone through a whole lot of it. So, but I've been through like a couple of 30 mils of TFA peanut butter, and I didn't notice any inconsistency. So yeah, I don't know. I can't really comment on that. Yeah. Go ahead.
I have a theory on peanut butter, but because I've heard people saying, oh, it's really strong at 2%. Then I find it strong like anywhere past 8%, but 8% still fine to vape. And I'm thinking it's a sensitivity to the volatiles in it. I don't know if it's an inconsistency more than people find it stronger at certain percentages, sort of like TFA strawberry, which kind of does the same thing. I can't do it anywhere past 2%, but then you've got mustard milk that's what, at 6% or 8%, you know, and that would be impossible for me to vape. That'd be chemicals. But I think it might just be a sensitivity per person rather than inconsistency on the flavors. That's my new theory, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, yeah, because for me, I agree with you. Like TFA peanut butter, 5% at least is what I need. I mean, 2%, I guess you could use as an accent or something, but for me personally, 5% is where I really start to taste it, like properly. And the same with TFA strawberry, I kind of, 2 to 3% is kind of my max. So yeah, I don't know. But I guess I'm just saying I do find TFA quite consistent. And in general, Capella as well, although they have done some of these shifty changing things up. And Flavour West I find pretty solid as well. I mean, they're just secretive about their ingredients. But I think to get back to your original question about sustainability, like a bunch of these companies like TFA, Capella, Flavour West, certainly those three, then their products found a place in the vaping industry, but it wasn't their original intention. So if vaping goes away or whatever, I think they'll be fine without us. So maybe a Flavora, maybe it's actually more precarious for them, even though they've done all this groundwork and try to be compliant and all this kind of stuff. If those flavors don't work in other industries, it may be a more precarious position for them. I don't really know.
Do you see a high dropout rate happening in the vape industry? If you look maybe say 3, 4, 5 years into the future, do you think that we're going to be seeing more flavor companies than there are currently, or less? Do you think people like Loran and so on will just decide, no, we don't want to go through this PMTA stuff, so we'll rather drop out?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of them will just not be used in the vaping business. So some of them will go away. Like Loran's perfect example, because they won't provide the CAS numbers, and they're just not interested at all in doing that. And they're a well-known food flavoring brand that I kind of need or want the attention. So I do think some of them will drop out of the vaping scene, so to say. Maybe not DIY. I don't know. But the whole business, how fast everything changes. Like, like currently now we're in a situation where it is genuinely cheaper for retailers to get their finished products from the States than it is for us to manufacture it here. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen people complaining about it, like, why is American stuff cheaper than South African? I mean, and it's just like, it's not bullshit. Like, it actually, they're doing a McDonald's on us, a Walmart on us at the moment. They're coming in en masse and undercutting everybody's prices. And just that alone could like flip the whole state of the South African business on its head within a few months. So yeah, who knows? I don't know where it's going, But as far as flavoring and DIY goes, it's kind of, because it's just a hobby, I think those things, all of them will always be available to us, or should be, just to kind of pursue our own mixing and our own hobbies kind of thing at home. And obviously commercially, who knows, but
to me, it's, any industry that starts in capitalism goes through various phases. I mean, you've got the early adopter phase, where it's very much a homemade industry. People are coming in, working from their backyards, making little startup companies, using crowdfunding, etc. Then you go through a sort of maximum chaos phase, where it's just anything goes. Big guys come in, small guys get big guys go bankrupt, etc. And then it kind of settles down into a, the market sorts itself out and so on. And I think we're in that maximum chaos phase now. There's one-shots competing with juices, there's DIY competing with commercial juice, there's flavoring companies competing against each other, there's companies that don't want to be in but their stuff's still being used, there's companies that want to come in but DIYers aren't using their stuff. And I think within the next 3 years or so, it'll kind of sort itself out. And I hope it does, because as a DIYer, I find this whole first rule thing I find very frustrating. I mean, I go on the front page of ATF to look at all the new recipes. I have first rule on 95% of the stuff. When I started DIY, I built up my flavor stash over time. It was the big five. It was TFA, FA, FW, CAP, and Inuera. So I built up my flavor stash to the point where I could make probably 50-60% of recipes. Now I'm back down to 10% again, because everything is Flavora, Delosi, Liquid Bar, Vape Train.
Yeah.
And it needs to come to it needs to come to some sort of resolution that allows people to move forward.
Yeah. That's kind of like what in a way, what I was saying is, like, I mean, I understand it's really fun to mix other people's stuff. And see what these new things are and whatever. But like, if you kind of have the full line of TFA, and maybe some Flavor West, you can really do a hell of a lot. Like you can satisfy, you can mix just about anything you want. I mean, there might be a few weirder, more exotic things like rice or whatever, okay, so how are you going to make rice with TFA, with what's available? But in general, it's a very, very solid, flexible line that you can go quite far with. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff I think is just novelty. Like, oh, it's new. Let's try this. Let's try that, and whatever. And then, like, I've kind of seen what happens. People try it. They try all this new stuff, and then it turns out, you know what? TFA strawberry is still one of the best. Doesn't fade. Yeah, it's solid. And these cycle, like, new stuff comes, and a few of them will stick around because they will prove to be classics and unique. But by and large, you certainly don't need every strawberry from every company and every this from every company. So yeah, I mean, I feel you. I mean, I got, with Vape Train, for example, who currently everyone's talking about them, and I got like a bunch of their flavors, and I can't mix some of that stuff either. I know what you mean, but I've also been through the thing enough times when I've been so excited about a flavor and I must have, and then I get it and it's like, what was the fuss about, It's just like another flavor. So, yeah, I mean, hopefully things will settle down. I think what you were saying, I must just say, like, on politically speak, like what you were saying, that the market will sort itself out. Like, it's. I mean, that's kind of the libertarian ideal, but the truth is that there are conspiracies. People do conspire. There are forces at work to control things and to monopolize, and so yeah, the market will sort itself out, or someone with a lot of money will sort out the market. It will go one of those ways.
But I think that happens anyway. You look at almost any industry, it's probably there are the sort of power brokers behind the scenes who.
No, it's no different. That's what I mean. It's no different to any of the other in that sense. People with the power and the money are gonna end up in control, as like always happens. But yeah, that's more of a concern for someone like me who has a foot in both camps. So the DIYers don't really have to worry. I don't think. I think DIY is here to stay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also when we're looking at this chaos stage, as Richard calls it at the moment, what will sort out a lot of that would be regulation. And one of the things that we were talking about is, what you want out of the regulation, Joel.
I guess, I just want it to be fair, which is probably asking a lot. But one of the things that I would like is just kind of, I suppose, like a good example would maybe be the textile industry, like the way they got totally crashed by imports. And then the government put on tariffs, so like it costs you quite a lot of money now to import a garment or whatever. So if we're going to be a legitimate local industry, then I'd like to see those protections extended to us as well. So if we're going to play ball, we're going to be made in a lab, we're going to be paying our taxes, all of that kind of stuff. I want to see those protections as well, so that there's tariffs on the competing imported products, and I just want us to really have the same shake that the other industries get. That's the kind of stuff, and I think, we do need regulation. I just hope they're fair. Like, I hope you don't have to have like an ISO 1, whatever the case is. Like, it should be reasonable. And there should be protections for the consumers, and for the business side as well, for the people involved in the industry. So, I just hope we get a fair shake. That's kind of... Yeah.
For me, one of the big problems with vaping internationally, not just in South Africa, is it's not being proactive. Everything is waiting for regulation and then saying people are being mean to us, big pharma's conspiring against us. What I would like to see is the industry approaching government proactively and saying, look, this is job creation, it's public health, it's technology, it's an export opportunity. Rather go to government with solutions than going to them with whining about, conspiracies and big pharma and big tobacco and all the rest.
We're going down. We've seen this playing itself out in other markets already, and we're going down that exact route. That everyone is kind of. This is just my opinion, but there isn't. We're a bunch of competing entities, and there's a certain amount of unity, I guess, but just not enough that there's any industry, that there's anybody that can speak for us, like as a unified kind of industry, I guess. And I agree with you completely. It's much easier to just sit back and complain than to be proactive. And I'm as guilty of that pretty much as anyone else. The only sort of proactive stuff that I've done is, putting a lab together so that at least when those assumed requirements come in, that we're already there, like in that form of compliance, and stuff like that, and just trying to get on with it. But I haven't done anything personally in terms of real, I suppose demonstrating to the powers that be, like what sort of benefits the industry could have for the country. But it's a difficult one as well, because it's a kind of a vice industry,
I think I think it would have to come from industry level, because it's going to require research and presentation. It will have to be presented by advocates and the whole bit. You can't just have normal oaks putting the stuff together. But 100%. To just look at what can vaping do for South Africa? Where is this market going? There's probably going to be a market emerging in in Africa. We can again be the gateway to Africa. We can export. We can be the technological leader on the continent. We can set an example in public health. And the whole time we're sitting back and being afraid that what's happening in America is going to happen here, when the best defense is a good offense. I say, take it to government and say, look, this industry is unregulated. Regulate it the right way, and it can do a lot of good for the country and for industry.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, and I do think it may not be too late, but we're expecting to see some form of early regulation within the next couple of weeks, right? Some sort of pronouncement, at least, or at least an indication of the direction of what this regulation is going to be. So that's going to be quite interesting. I mean, as someone pointed out, if they ban vaping in public, what's going to happen to VapeCon? And vape shops, and
Is there going to be a mention on vaping? I know with the new smoking regulation that's coming out now, I just want to know exactly what it is. It hasn't been released yet, right? There's just talk that it's on its way.
Yeah, they are going to talk about the Tobacco Act, I think in like a week or 10 days or something. And there's speculation that they will mention something about e-cigarettes. There's nothing concrete. There's speculation because they have mentioned it in the past. So I personally think that they will mention it, that we'll get a mention and we'll get an indication of the direction that they want to take.
Bloody hope not. Yeah. This time I hope not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I work a little bit sort of on the side with regulation and standardization and so on. And I would bet dollars to donuts that we will basically take the TPD and adopt it, just harmonize it for South Africa, and that'll be the regulation. Because this is, in most things, this is South Africa's aim, is to fit in with what the rest of the world is doing. It means that for manufacturers who want to import here, it's easy because they've already fulfilled the requirements for the EU or the North American market or whatever. So it makes it a lot easier for people to import here. And that is basically the aim of standards, is to, facilitate trade. So I would look very strongly at basically the TPD, but in a South African context.
That I think, I tend to agree with that, and I do think that's actually a kind of a best case scenario for us. Because there's a lot of space in there to make things work, and it also, I mean, it does have a kind of a good, I suppose you could say, a good public health angle, which is ultimately the point of vaping, is the harm reduction, even though it's so much damn fun and so tasty and all that. But it's that harm reduction. Yeah, I mean, let's hope. Because we do need it. It has to happen. Because, I mean, like I said, I would like a real kind of legitimate industry. I don't want to go underground. I know a lot of people have said, bring the regulate, we'll go underground and there'll be a black market. I don't want to be part of a black market. I want like a real legitimate business. So, let's hope. I mean, I think you're right. Richard, I hope you're right.
The only thing that worries me is that we are currently in the same, legally, we're in the same status as Australia. We may not have nicotine.
Yeah.
Now, all they need to do is enforce that law, and then suddenly DIY is in huge problem. I mean, they don't enforce it currently, but the fact is it's on the statute books. And if they did choose to enforce it, we would be in a world of hurt.
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely, and for DIY and for manufacturers and for, and it's not kind of like Australia where you have, different states having slightly different regulations. We're not like that. So if it comes down statewide, nationwide, and then like kind of that's that, So yeah, it is. I mean, it's kind of interesting times. It's like exciting in a way. It's pretty scary because everything's kind of on a knife edge, you know. There's so many things in the supply chain that like we're really dependent on, you know. Like I've had a thing recently where I've just been very hard for me to find good VG. And, you know, VG is 70% of the product. 70% of the product. So you can't find good VG, whole product goes away. You know, just like nicotine. You can't find nicotine, everything goes away. They reformulate this one flavor, your whole thing changes. It's like there's so many of these factors that can really affect things. So yeah.
What is your sense on that? I mean, most of the studies that I'm reading now are looking quite critically at PG and VG as being sources of acetaldehyde and, you know, various other nasty things that are basically the very few harmful chemicals in vaping. Do you think we locked into VG and PG, or do you think the power or the scientific pharmaceutical blokes are going to start looking at alternatives?
I think that, you know, they will look at alternatives, definitely, or different ways of creating that vapor out of the same compounds. At, you know, whatever temperature control, if it's whatever it is, just that effects or those findings. I mean, what I've recently come to learn is that BP or USP grade does not necessarily mean that it's good for vaping. I mean, that's obvious, but just to extend that further, what I actually mean is that the product may have passed those tests, but could still have something in it that is detrimental just even to the flavor of your vape. So it could have passed all the tests, but it could still be doing something weird to your recipe that wasn't happening with the previous batch, and it still passed the test, and it's still USP, BP, whatever. So this is something I've learned recently in my VG hunt problem.
The thing is, this is also a legacy of an industry that piggybacks onto existing industries and grows from them. People kind of assume that what we started out with are set in stone. And, you know, you've got to continue because we started with PG and VG. That's what we've got. But, you know, you look at PG sensitivity. A lot of vapors are sensitive to PG. Surely scientific labs and pharmaceutical companies can now look at ways, you know, bases that do the same thing, but take out that sensitivity, take out the bad stuff.
Well, I mean, PG and VG essentially, it was almost like someone stumbled on it, you know. It's like they were there already. They were being used in other industries, and it was like, what can vaporize, you know, what's going to produce a decent amount of vapor, you know. And flavorings were already in a PG base, a lot of them. So it seemed just like a natural fit, I guess. I don't think there was ever any real sort of intention put into like what is actually the best substance for carrying these flavors and what is the safest one, and if it doesn't exist, can we bring it into existence, and can we invent something? I think those days are still ahead of us, if the industry continues, obviously, you know. I think it was just sort of happenstance. Those things were there and they worked, and then why change what works, you know? I still think there is quite a lot of room for innovation. And we said it comes in like in unexpected ways, like nicotine salts. I mean, it's not like it's anything super new technologically speaking, but it changed the industry, changed the way people approach vaping. It is a kind of an innovation in a way. You can consume less and be just as satisfied. You know, that's a type of innovation.
Well, as the industry grows, I mean, the profit motive, as the economies of scale increase, the profit motive for a chemical company. I mean, why are we even using two base chemicals in PG and VG? Why not make one? Or make one but differing densities. So you buy, an 80 or a 60 or a 70, but it's just one chemical that you add, and you take the best parts of PG and VG together, cut out all the bad stuff that happens when it gets vaporized, and you market that as a vaping specific base product.
As long as you don't end up with like an Alterna type of a situation.
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, definitely there was a push to higher VG. Like you've seen that, back in the day it was like 60 PG, and then 50-50, and then 60-40, 70-30. It's kind of there's definitely like this push. There has been a push to more VG type of stuff.
I'm like Wayne, I'm going in the other direction. I started at 70-30, then 60-40. Now I'm considering sort of 50-50.
Yeah.
As you say, with the VG now, it's so watery. It's like PG anyway. I'll just ditch the VG.
Yeah, VG is crap at the moment. I'm like really struggling. I was supposed to like launch a line, like 4 new flavors this month, and I'm like considering just canceling it until I can, because it's not good. I mean, it's like it mutes it. Yeah, it mutes it.
Well, I noticed that Wayne did a video recently where he did close-ups of him mixing, and he did a close-up of his VG bottle with the VG coming out. And I thought to myself, that's not what my VG looks like when it comes out of my nozzle. Mine is not as thick as that.
Yeah. I started noticing this probably about 2 months ago, like that there's definite qualitative change in VG. And I thought I was going nuts. So I thought I had vapor's tongue. I thought I was going mad. I don't know, because things were just different inexplicably. I don't know. And then I started asking around, and it's kind of like, other people are noticing it as well. So I guess it's not just me, But you know what? We've got bigger problems than VG. So yeah. But it's like, it's a problem. I'm going to have to delay my launch. Can I say sorry, everyone?
I think, just on a lighter note, Daniel, you also said you had a couple of questions, and let's start off with this one here. And it's really just on DIY. As you said, you dabble a little bit into DIY. What makes you decide on a recipe to mix up? Is there specific mixes that you follow and religiously only mix up their stuff, or are you looking for a profile specifically? What makes you pick a recipe and mix it up?
I guess I'm like a little bit of a fanboy type. Like there are certain mixes like I know, okay, that's going to be good. Or even if it's not really my kind of thing, like at least I'll get something out of it. I'll enjoy some aspect of it. So often, yes, it will be like going on people that I trust. So like I kind of know, I mean, we know kind of the names that are prominent, both locally and from like the kind of the scene, the international scene. There's some mixes you can trust. So generally I'll kind of, or at least pay more attention if they release something. And then a lot of the time it's just like I'm trying to learn about a flavor. So say I've picked a flavor and I'm trying to learn about it, then I'll go look at who's mixed what with this flavor and see what they've combined it with. And that said, I very rarely mix other people's stuff these days, and it's not because I don't want to. It's just because I'm just mixing all the time, and doing kind of my own research, So in the case of like if I've got a new line, like there literally just are no notes. There's no notes. So I got to do it. And that's what I'm doing. So I don't have time to go and mix like whatever's trending on all the flavors. Yeah. And then plus now nothing has any flavor because there's the VG.
What is your take on all these one shots that are coming out? I mean, for me, DIY has become a case of 100,000 people shouting at each other. Try my juice. But
yeah,
as you say, people don't really have the time to try other people's juice.
Yeah.
And I mean, Skittles was talking about this on a podcast recently, where he says he thinks the one-shot market is very quickly becoming saturated because there are as many suppliers as there are customers, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I basically what's happening in DIY is what's happening in the rest of the industry.